The Third Worst Year by The Friendcakes. Read by Elamex Mabella. Summary. Draco Malfoy has 1 year to fall in true love with Harry Potter or be turned into a dragon. And he knows that is never gonna happen. This is going to be the worst year of his life. Well, minus that whole having to kill Dumbledore or be killed by Voldemort thing. Second worst year. Oh, but there was his whole 7th year while Voldemort was using his house as a home base for Death Eaters and making him torture his fellow students. That one was pretty bad too. Fine, this is his 3rd worst year of his life. Notes. Prompt details. Draco will turn into a dragon on his 25th birthday. The only thing that can save him is a true love's kiss. His true love, Harry Potter. Draco just turned 24 and is getting his affairs in order because not gonna happen. 1. 365 days. On the quarter, the skin will shift to scales, the breath will turn to smoke, and the nothingness will be consumed by fire. Only the chosen can save the sinner's heart with a true love's kiss, so tender it slayed a dragon. Draco Malfoy leaned back in his chair, watching the smoky figure of Trelawney dissipate. With his arms crossed, he regarded the spot with calculating eyes. He didn't move. Everyone in the dark room watched him for his reaction. They were accepting a poor one at that. He leaned forward, putting his elbows on his knees, and scrubbed his face. Finally, he uncovered his face and looked around. "Are you sure I'm the sinner? It's not like I actually killed anyone. Maimed and maybe tortured a little, but still, could be Zabini," he said, with sarcasm in his tone that matched his crisp black suit. "Malfoy, you need to take this seriously." Some grouchy unspeakable barked at him. Draco arched a dark eyebrow. "If you don't find true love, you'll be turned into a dragon on your next birthday." "Frankly, I'd rather die," Draco scoffed, pushing a few stray locks of white blonde hair from his eyes. Because if the prophecy was really meant for him as retribution for all the damage he caused in the war, he would rather be a dragon over the alternative. Plus, there were some rather hot dragon keepers out there if he remembered his 4th year correctly. Because while maybe these Department of Mystery employees weren't putting the puzzle pieces together, Draco was too smart for the fates. Honestly, they needed a better writer, something not so obvious so that maybe he'd give a damn and try to find love or some shit. Because if he had deciphered the message correctly, there was no fucking way in hell he was ever going to kiss Harry Potter, the chosen one. 364.5. On his way home, Draco stopped in a muggle store on the corner. He purchased a handle of bourbon, a Kit Kat, and a calendar full of happy kittens with inspirational phrases. This wasn't unusual. Well, the muggle store part. The calendar was odd, but if he was going to track the days he had left until he couldn't sneeze without spewing fire, it made sense. It was either kittens or half-dressed firefighters, and that seemed a little too ironic even for his liking. This was going to be the worst year of his life. Well, minus that whole having to kill Dumbledore or be killed by Voldemort thing. 2nd worst year. Oh, but there was his whole 7th year while Voldemort was using his house as a home base for Death Eaters and making him torture his fellow students. That one was pretty bad too. Fine, this was the 3rd worst year of his life. Upon getting back to his London penthouse flat, Draco drank straight from the bottle and tried to remove a rather expensive painting that the decorator his mother hired chose from the wall. He'd always found it a bit drab anyways. He found his mother had magicked it to the wall with a Malfoy family sticking spell, so only an honored Malfoy family member could take it down to prevent theft. Stupid for such an ugly thing, but it probably cost a stupid amount as well. He thought he probably should donate it to a museum, but then again, there was a bin for the second-hand store that was much closer. He'd drop it off on the way to work one day. Once it was down, he magicked a calendar to stick where the painting once had hung. "Hang in there!" an orange kitten hanging from a branch told him. "Good joke," he told the kitten, even though it didn't move like wizarding photos. It was probably for the best. He flipped through the month, checking out the other kittens and quickly counting the days. The reality of the situation hit him hard, and only one word came to mind. Fuck! 359. Dear Astoria, due to a new development, our marriage contract is null and void from this moment onward. I could explain further, but honestly, I just don't want to. Thank you for letting me put it in your ass all those times. You'll make a great pureblood wife someday. DLM. The next morning. Astoria was livid! Pansy gasped, her voice so shrill it could break glass. And maybe that was just because Draco was nursing a hangover that made his vision go a little blurry when she spoke too quickly. As if reading his mind, Blaze poured a cup of fire whiskey that he'd brought over and slid it across the counter to Draco. His friend might have been a few words, but he always knew exactly how to take care of his friends. Why? Draco said between greedy sips. I'm sure you calmed her down just fine. It took forever, Pansy whined. You take the galleons away from the posh pureblood bread for reparations, but you couldn't take the posh pureblood bread out of the girl. Or something like that. She always takes forever to come. Draco rolled his eyes. Penny didn't deny the implication. Where's Theo? We figured this was a coming to Merlin that you two were deeply in love with each other. Pansy asked, changing the subject. She found her own cup from the cabinet and put a finger to sip on. Draco grinned. He was right about the Astoria thing. Pansy only drank fire whiskey after a good fuck. Draco scoffed. We always fight over who tops. It'd never work. He makes a good bossy bottom when he wants to, Blaze murmured with a shrug. Pansy and Draco stared at him, waiting for further information. Theo's busy, Draco sighed and continued the conversation. The fates revealed my stupid one true love, though. That's why the contract voided. You're fucking me, Pansy gasped. I'm probably the only person that's not, Draco shot back offhandedly. And me, Blaze said, raising his hand. Not yet. Pansy corrected Blaze, giving him a wink and ignoring his eye roll before turning to Draco. Well, who is it? You can't just say that and then not tell us. He didn't want to say. He knew that when he finally said the name aloud, then it would be cemented and true. He could deny it all he wanted if no one else knew. It's not like he was telling them about the whole turning into a dragon part of it. No, fuck that. He didn't need their stupid advice to handle that. Thanks. Potter, Draco muttered under his breath. Pansy peed herself right there in the middle of the kitchen from laughing too hard. 351. It wasn't that Draco still hated Potter the way he had back at Hogwarts. The whole Death Eater versus Boy Who Lived, Draco attempting to kill Dumbledore, father trying to kill Potter's girlfriend, accidentally slicing Draco open in the bathroom, drawing room incident, inquisitorial squad, Quidditch rivalry, vanishing cabinet, etc., etc. It was all old news between the foes. No, really, now he hated Potter because no matter what, the man was always a mess. He always looked like he'd just rolled out of bed, shoving on his clothes, and grabbed a pancake like it was a bloody piece of bread to munch on as he stepped through the flue. His papers would then have a soft hint of butter and maple syrup and carbohydrates laced through them all day long. He hated Potter because he didn't keep his face clean-shaven anymore, now preferring a layer of scruff that matched the hair on his head in both color and disloyalty to staying in any sort of shape. Draco hated that Potter's glasses were the same. He would even put money on them being the same pair from first year. It was obnoxious how well they still fit his facial features. Furthermore, the whole fame and fortune and heroism shit did not go to Potter's head. He was humble, modest even, and liked to hide in the background. When both he and Draco were up for the prominent of lead aura of the Unforgivable division, Potter suggested they share the title and be co-leads. Draco wanted to use an unforgivable on the man because it was a bloody brilliant idea and he should have thought of it himself. Also because now they'd have to work together in a tandem. Now they weren't just co-workers, but working together in the same office day in and day out. Their desks faced each other, but clearly the space was not shared. Draco's side of the room was meticulously to the point he was even embarrassed, but he liked it clean, organized, and sparse. Potter's side was every bit the same mess as his wardrobe, and he was never phased in the slightest when an important folder went missing. The worst of it was not that they were just co-leads, but the proximity had made them become friends. They were always chatting about this or that, Quidditch or home life, bad dates or stupid things their friends did. They cracked jokes constantly and were no longer name-called, but teased in a playful way that ended in them laughing for hours. Sometimes they called it quits early to grab happy hour at the Leaky. Like this morning, Potter was late. It was 15 past the hour, and there was no Saint Potter seated at the desk across from Draco. Interdepartmental memos flew around the desk, nervously shaking with the need to be read urgently. Draco had once attempted to collect the stupid paper airplanes, but they dive-bombed him as they were for Potter's eyes only, so now he just threw paper clips at them in retaliation and maybe a touch of immaturity. It was 23 past the hour when Potter waltzed in, wearing a plaid flannel overshirt, unbuttoned to reveal just a plain black shirt underneath. Draco hated how tight it was, how it stretched over Potter's sculpted muscles. It was rude and offensive. "Sorry, overslept," Potter apologized, running a hand through his already messy hair and plopping in his chair. He didn't even care to pluck the memos from the air. "Don't apologize. The silence was nice," Draco said back with a tone that was much snappier than he meant. Green eyes flickered up to him and devoured his being. He could feel Potter taking him in, assessing his posture and every possible clue of what was boiling underneath. Draco stole into himself, building his occlumency walls, even though he knew Potter was shit at legilimency, especially without a wand and spell set. "Did you have a nice birthday, Holes?" Potter asked finally. "Not exactly," Draco conceded. He had taken time off to enjoy his birthday, not thinking he would be dragged into the ministry to be delivered a bullshit prophecy. Though he did spend much of his time off drunk, just not on a yacht in France, with the June sun on his skin and his friends laughing around him. "That's too bad," Potter said, shifting in his seat nervously. He always did that, as if he had more to say, but knew not to say it. Sometimes Draco would enjoy watching the man squirm adorably, then tell him to spit it out, but this morning was not one of those times. He went back to his paperwork instead. How the fuck was he going to be able to work across from Potter for another year, knowing what he knew now? How could he even be friendly when he knew it would all be over soon? Finally, the mess of a human spoke again. I got you something. A present for your birthday, I mean." Draco looked up, silver eyes finding Potter holding a small package across the desk. It was wrapped in brown parchment and tied with a shoelace of all things. He regarded the gift before taking it, making sure his long, pale fingers did not touch Potter's. His signet ring glinted in the charmed sunny window, and Potter's nails looked clean and shaped nicely, albeit a bit stubby for once. Draco sat back in his chair and slowly unwrapped the package, making sure to tear at the edges and savor the joy of a present, no matter how poorly wrapped. He could sense Potter fidgeting in his seat across from him. Obviously, it wasn't elegant paper to save, but Draco had never torn into a present. Never been allowed to. When he popped the top of the small box, a snitch flew out. It hovered in front of Draco's face, flapping its wings quickly, but with no intention of escaping. The sun caught the metal surface, winking at him, telling him to catch it. Draco felt nervous to touch it, so he just let it float, unsure if this was a mockery of his seeking abilities or something different. "It's from our first match together," Potter announced, his voice cracking and gruff with nerves. It always wanted you to catch it, you know. It was hovering by you the whole game. So you're saying I was just oblivious and a bad seeker? Draco asked, finally looking back at Potter and raising a dark eyebrow. He meant it as a tease, but the other former seeker blushed and shifted awkwardly in his seat. Draco kept his face blank while he internally savored watching Potter fall apart and memorized the way his blush spread from his neck upwards instead of starting in his cheeks. No, I just... He gulped down air. Whatever he wanted to say was getting lost in his mind, making Draco skeptical and nervous himself. I always thought you were a brilliant seeker. You were just better, Draco replied with another tease, this time trying to hide his own blush. Shut up, Potter chuckled. It always wanted to be yours, is what I'm trying to say. Nothing wants to be mine, Draco laughed, shaking his head as he watched the snitch fly away from his face and up to the ceiling, joining the circling memos above Potter's head, out of Draco's reach. Not his at all. Potter shifted again, another quip on his tongue he fought to keep under control. Well, I hope you have a better birthday next year, then. Potter finally settled with a small, pitying smile, and finally collected his memos from the air to get to work. Draco watched the dark-haired man for a moment longer, the way Potter's bright green eyes read over the parchment, and how he bit his slightly chapped bottom in a thought. How Potter found his quill in the mess on his desk without even looking. How he silently mouthed the words he scratched back in reply, then scrunched his nose when he misspelled something and had to cross it out. The irony of everything, how next year his birthday would be his end. How this man, across from him, could be his savior. Again, how a year was so far away, and also no time at all. The snitch made its way back to Draco, but the man didn't reach out and catch it. Doubtful. Draco sighed to himself and started back on his paperwork. Finally, out of everything, Draco hated Potter because he was pretty sure he was already in love with the man. To be continued. Thank you for listening to today's chapter of The Third Worst Year by The Friendcakes, read by Ella Max Mabella. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, AO3, Instagram, or Tumblr.